Hi, Mr. Coombs. I appreciate you coming back to meet with me after we did the observation.
Good morning.
I really enjoyed the lesson. It's fun. Anytime it's entertaining to go down to your class, but it's really fun to see your students engaged.
Yeah.
And they were very engaged that day. I know you were happy about it too. But they were super engaged, and I really enjoyed the lesson. Just kind of, along the lines before we get specifically into the lesson, just thinking about, how we do these TEKs, this process, because it is a structured process, but I do think it's very important that we keep that open line of communication and have it more of an open forum. So, I'm going to ask you some questions, but feel free to jump in at any time, talk to me about any concerns, anything you might have, and we'll go from there. Along the line of TEKs, just thinking about the standards that we talk about in TEKs, what do you feel like is your strength? If you have one, if you have to pick one or maybe a couple, what do you think your strength is as far as the standards involved?
For me, I'm thinking my strength actually revolves around the collaboration with the students as well as the faculty. And getting back to TEKs, the opportunities I have to discuss things with you, it actually helps us refine our practices. And by no means are we perfect. I think we have open communication. That was a tough one, or hey, this one worked out really well. We should try to take that approach in the future. So that's what it's all about for me. We're learning the students, we're learning each other, and we come up with a better product at the end. But without that communication, we may be off in left field somewhere doing the wrong things, but it really works for us.
I agree. Going back specifically to the lesson that I observed earlier, what standards or concepts do you think that your students were able to master in that lesson?
Yeah, it gets a little bit complex, even though the material is very simple. I have second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade students, and within that group, they're all at different levels. For example, a lot of my third graders, they're still learning your basic addition and subtraction. The lesson that you observed, we were doing single digits, and I think what they mastered was the application of addition and subtraction to word problems. So that was helpful for me. It let me realize that not only could they do basic addition and subtraction, they could apply that to a word problem. And a lot of them are still learning to master reading, so that level's very low as well. But you gotta try to tie in as much as you possibly can. Those teachable moments don't come around every day, so.
Especially with your class.
Yeah.
Added challenges there. So.
Yeah. As far as planning the lesson, we can script it on paper, but you have to remain very flexible. It could go from math to science in a hurry. So just trying to be as flexible as possible helps.
I agree. You talked a little bit about the different age groups and grade levels that you teach. How do you kind of plan to, and I know we talked about planning as well, but how do you plan to structure those lessons when you're dealing with second, third, fourth, and fifth graders that are all on a pretty vastly different level?
Yeah, when you look at the dynamics, usually the students prefer to be within their grade level. For example, if I have 3 fifth grade students, they're the upperclassmen, they want the kidney table because they're kind of the alpha males. Unfortunately, it doesn't always play out that way. We have some fifth grade students that are on a third grade level, so we do actually mix and mingle. Again, a lot of it's about relationships. A fifth grader and a third grader that get along, they can work at the same table. A fifth grader and a fourth grader that don't get along, we try to separate that group. Fortunately, we have a parapro, so it gives us a little bit of variation. Sometimes the students don't like a particular teacher that day, So
Right.
a lot of it, you kind of assess the situation, make the best decision you can, do a lot of informal check-ins with the students and see if they're actually getting the material.
Yeah.
If not, then you have to make another adjustment.
Yeah.
But it helps when we've had a chance to talk about your evaluations.
Sure.
You're very candid, very constructive, and that helps us kind of do what we need to do.
I appreciate that.
Well, you have a good world view.
Right.
It's not always textbook.
Right.
So that's good to know that someone can help you get
Yes.
creative.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So just kind of going back to the lesson and with your different levels and that you have in that class. For example, that specific lesson, what were you doing to check for content mastery? How are you kind of handling that side of it?
What we would do normally, if we were working on a specific word problem, what we can do is do some verbal exercises with the students, basically change up the word problem. Instead of 3 apples plus 7 oranges, what if we did, 2 pears plus 4 cantaloupe?
Yeah.
And that lets us get some vocabulary in there. You can usually tell pretty quickly.
Yeah.
The light bulb will go on. A lot of times, too, you'll get some chatter from the other students, and a lot of kids, they look up to other students.
Yes.
So if someone makes a positive comment, hey, you're getting that, John, that lets us know that it's not just our assessment.
Sure.
Everybody else knows too.
So that's important.
Yeah, they value their relationships just as much as doing well in school.
Yeah. Anything you feel like you could have done better in that lesson?
Yeah, there's always room for improvement. Sometimes when things start to get a little bit chaotic, you may be a little too quick to intervene.
Sure.
Part of our job is to teach these boys and girls how to work through things, come up with solutions. And my fear is getting a situation where the environment's not conducive to learning.
Right.
So you want to jump in, but sometimes you have to let things play out. So I think being a little more patient. With my population of students, it takes a little while sometimes for the light to pop on. It's not bang bang.
Right.
And usually you want to jump in and provide assistance or say, no, we want to do it this way. But if you can let them work through it, it's much more beneficial.
I agree.
So when we do our planning, that's what we try to do. Think about some of these things outside the box, what might come up. They're different characteristics. And you can't think of everything, but the more you're prepared for, the better outcomes you generally have.
Just, specifically on the lesson, I thought you did an excellent job with differentiated instruction, which is a huge part of your class every single day. You gotta differentiate with every single student, but I thought you did an outstanding job with that. Your classroom management was handled very well, and really in your classroom, more so than any other classrooms, that's dictated on moods from minute to minute with your students. But for the most part, it's handled very well, and it definitely was at that time. Your assessment strategies that you were using, not just official, when we're talking about summative or formative assessments, your informal assessment strategies that you're using just by questioning students along the way. Are you getting this? Does that make sense to you? Those types of things, specifically when you're working with the student that we mentioned earlier that is generally not engaged, but he was. It was good to see that you were checking for understanding throughout, and then you talked about checking for mastery, so your assessment uses are there. You're doing a great job with that as well. Your communication, not only with your students, but with other teachers and your parents of your students. You do an excellent job with that as well. So your development as an instructional leader in the classroom has grown leaps and bounds in the 2
You
years.
kind of learn along the way.
You do.
And you were helpful. It would have never dawned on me. But the students have their preferences, whether it's math versus science.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
that day, we were fortunate in math. If I had been teaching science, he may not have responded.
Right.
You don't know. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of little ingredients
Sure.
that mix into it.
Yeah. And that was, one thing that you already actually touched on that I was going to talk to you about is when you intervene, and
Yeah.
and that's just it's tricky.
It's a judgment
You
call.
ride that line.
Yeah.
And you do, and you just, but you've got the right frame of mind there when you try to let things play out enough to see where they're going to go. Because more often than not, us as teachers, us as adults,
Right.
we, like you said, we want to step in, we want to end it right now.
Right.
But we could be making a bigger deal out of it than it really is going to be. It could
Yeah.
die off and become nothing in 2 seconds.
Exactly.
So-
I mean, the only paramount thing that I look at generally is safety.
Right.
When safety becomes an issue, it's kind of a no-brainer. You got to
Yes.
get in there. But other times, like you said, be patient. I think they learn a lot more when they kind of solve their own issues and come up with solutions. And hopefully next time it'll be easier for them.
Yeah, I think so. I appreciate all your contributions you've given to us.
Yes, sir.
These
Thank
couple of
you
years,
as well.
The EBD program and everything has just been tremendous. And
Great.
you've left some big shoes to fill for sure. We're
I
gonna
think
miss you.
they'll do well. I
Well,
think
it's
they
gonna be
will.
it's a challenging group, and you came along with each of those students, so it's
Yeah.
gonna be tough. But
It's evolving too as the EVD program starts to grow. Hopefully you'll get more consistency with the
Sure.
students. You'll be teaching apples and apples,
Yeah.
whereas now there's a whole variety.
I think there's beginning to be a little more understanding of what exactly the program is.
Yeah.
I don't think for a while. I don't think that was out there.
Yeah, it is hard because they may demonstrate certain characteristics today, and
Yeah.
later in the week you may be wondering, hey, should they really be here, or they need a higher level of intensity. So it fluctuates.
It does.
I do see the program kind of evolving,
Yeah.
and I think it'll meet the need.
I hope so. Well, I appreciate it, Mr. Coons.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks
Seward.
for coming and meeting with me.
You bet.